Hi, I'm Big River's program director, Mike Flynn, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how our half and full marathon training team training plan spreadsheets work. So when you open up the document, you'll see this first tab, which is Sunday long runs. And then there's additional tabs for weekday workouts. And in the case of the fall season, we have tabs for the St. Jude Memphis Marathon weekend events. Starting with the Sunday long run tabs. So you'll see which of the weeks we're in, what that actual calendar date is, and then you'll see the location that we're running at. And these are hyperlinks. So, for example, if you click on this one, you will actually open up and see a route description, which shows a map of our run around Forest Park, gives you a bit of an elevation profile, a little bit of parking information, bathroom, water fountain information. In this case, there's some maps of Forest Park showing where to park. Mileage recommendations for the different distances, whether you're training for a half or a full marathon. A route link that you can click on, which would let you sync this over to your Garmin. And then often we have a verbal description of at least parts of the route or information on how to add on or shorten distance. And so that's going to be available for every week on the training plan. There will be one of those hyperlinks that you can click on and you can see the whole season here in advance. So you'll see that our location changes each week. Our two goal races are down here in week 13, the Mo Cowbell Half Marathon and Marathon, and then in week 15, the Great Ghost St. Louis Halloween Half Marathon. So those are our dates and locations. Then we have half marathon and marathon recommendations for mileage. And so we've got beginner mileage, intermediate mileage, and advanced mileage for both distances. And we have some descriptions down here of who might fall into which of those categories, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. So read over those and choose which seems the most appropriate. Our basic run route each week that's in the route description is typically going to be somewhere between the beginner or the intermediate half marathon mileage. As we get later into the season, often it is the beginner half marathon mileage. Early in the season, some of our routes, such as our week one route, is more in line with the intermediate half marathon mileage. But it spells out in there that for people looking to run shorter, they can turn around. So 2 miles in, the beginner group would turn around and retrace their steps. And then if you want to add additional mileage, you would run that 6-ish mile base route and then add on more miles, depending on what your goal is for the week in terms of how many miles to run. Most of the weeks, it is a specific number. In some cases, there's a bit of a range to give you a little bit of flexibility with your training. Um, the run walk group follows the beginner half marathon mileage, although we do, upon request, have a run walk marathon training plan, which we can share through the V.02 coaching platform. So that's the general overview here. There are some notes later down when we get to week 10 about some of these, or week 9. There's some asterisks and other notations on the training plan for the marathoners about long runs. We'll talk more about that as we get later into the season. Um, but basically, the high level overview is we don't want to do three really, really taxing runs on 3 consecutive weekends and totally wear you out a few weeks prior to your race. So we are encouraging you to cap most of those runs in the 2.5 to 3 hour ballpark. But on week 11, sorry, week 10 to go ahead and actually do the full 18 miles or longer. But in weeks 9 and 11 to cap your run at 2.5 or 3 hours. So that's the Sunday tab. Athletico physical therapy will be out there about half of the weeks throughout the season. So once we get that schedule finalized, that'll be notated in this Athletico column over here. And then sometimes there's going to be additional notes if a shoe brand or another vendor is going to be doing a product demo or something special one of those mornings. So then we go to the weekday workouts tab. And these are here for your reference. This is all free. We do, excuse me, we do offer some coaching packages that you can purchase to get more individualized coaching for training team. but these are a general framework for either beginner or intermediate workouts for the half marathon and marathon distance. And so what you'll see is each week there's an A workout and there's a B workout. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the document, there's a bit of a definition here. So A workouts are the primary workout, and you can do those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, assuming that your long run is on Sunday. Basically, we don't want you doing it the day before or the day after your long run. The B workouts are a secondary weekly workout for people who are running 5 or more days a week. And then they can be done on either Thursday or Friday, but should not be done on back-to-back days with the primary A workout. So if you do the A workout on Tuesday and you want to do the B workout on Thursday or Friday, great. If you do the A workout on Wednesday, though, your option for the B workout would be Friday because we want a day off between those two harder workouts. And then if you do the A workout on either Thursday or Friday, you wouldn't be doing the B workout. There's also a bit of an outline here showing if you're running 3 days per week, 4 days per week, 5 days per week, or 6 days a week, what your week should look like. So you're always going to have that long run. We're always encouraging you to do at least one midweek workout. And then there's some combination of easy runs and potentially that B workout filling out the rest of your week. So you can use that to give some structure to your training, or you can purchase one of our coaching packages and a coach will write a plan and guide you through setting up your training. So we do have dates and then days of the week on here for those A's and B's for each week. Location, it's always on your own. And then you'll get some examples of what these workouts would be. And in the newsletter each week, there's going to be a document that you can click on that's going to give an explanation of what all this means. But this first week, all the groups have hill strides. So 10 to 15 WU. WU is shorthand for warm up. You're going to do a warm up. Then you're going to run some number of hill strides depending on which plan you're following. Strides are accelerations. They're not all out sprints. They're somewhere in the ballpark of 800-meter to mile pace, or progressive acceleration over the course of the time. So just progressively accelerating for 15 seconds, but never quite getting to maximum velocity. Um, and then doing a minute and 30 or a minute easy recovery, depending on which plan you're following, and then following that up with a cool down. So again, each week there will be a description in a Word document of here's what the shorthand for the workout means, and it provides additional information. Um, so those are all things to look at on the training plan. For the fall season, we do support and partner with the St. Jude Memphis Marathon and the St. Jude Heroes program. So the beginning of this training plan, the locations are all the same. For the half marathon and marathoners, though, these Memphis distances are going to vary from the first tab. And basically, what we're doing is, regardless of whether you're training for the half or the full, we're encouraging you to either run the Mo Cowbell half marathon or do a virtual race that weekend as a tune-up event. But the cowbell race is fun, so you might as well do the actual race and practice in a race environment. And then the marathoners continue to build from there to get up to marathon distance. The half marathoners get, a bit of post-race recovery and then re-engaging with their training to get ready for a second fall half marathon roughly 2 months later. And so after we wrap up our normal season in October, the locations are on your own for the Memphis crew. But we've got the distance recommendations there each week. And then they continue to receive weekday workouts all the way through week 22. And that document does contain descriptions for those as well. We do also have these pace charts here on the training plan. There's three. So there's a 13.1 pace chart for half marathoners, a 26.2 pace chart for marathoners. Those look very similar and work very similarly. There's also a run walk pace chart, which comes from the Jeff Galloway book on the run walk methodology. And so you can kind of choose from these or use these as references to figure out what's going to be um, your best paces to train at. So if you are using this run walk chart, and run walkers can use any of these, but we'll just start here since I'm looking at it. Um, there's a couple ways to use this. So one is to say, I'm going to run a mile. I'm going to run it nice and fast, and that's going to become my benchmark time. And so maybe you can run a 10-minute mile, like all out your magic mile. Galloway calls it the magic mile. It's 10 minutes. So according to this pace chart, your corresponding predictor would be 32:46 for a 5K, 1:11:27 for a 10K, 2:37:18 for a half marathon, 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 50 seconds for a marathon. Um, and so that would give you a rough benchmark of these are reasonable half or full marathon times to shoot for. And then he gives you an easy pace. So if all out mile gives you a 10-minute mile, 15-minute per mile would be sort of your easy pace. What you can also do with this is come over here and look at these run walk strategies, and it gives recommendations for what intervals to use. So maybe you are that 10-minute mile, you're trying to train for a half marathon. So 2:37:18 is your goal time. Galloway's got that at 12-minute per mile pace. So you'd come over here, and because this is the pace we're interested in, is the actual training pace. So we're trying to train for a race at 12-minute mile or race at 12 minutes per mile. So you'd look at 10:45 to 12:15 per mile. And these are various interval combinations that he recommends. So 1 minute run followed by a 30-second walk. Keep repeating that. 40-second walk or 40-second run followed by a 20-second walk. Keep repeating that. 30-second run followed by either 15 or 30-second walk. Keep repeating that. Or doing 20 seconds on with a run, 20 seconds off with a walk. And so this, I think the biggest value here is there's some recommendations on what intervals could make the most sense at different paces. And then there is a general framework for what you might be reasonably able to accomplish in terms of goal times for a half or full marathon based off of a mile time. Or if you have a recent 5K or 10K time, you could plug those in and use that. So that's the run walk pace chart. For the marathon and half marathon pace charts, these have a lot more data on them. They're the same. Basically, the biggest difference is what we're using is the index time. So on the half marathon pace chart, we have a series of half marathon goal times starting at an hour and 10 minutes and going back to 3.5 hours. Um, and then on the marathon chart, we're just the bold is over here in this other column, and we're using times that correspond around marathon times. So what we can do here is use this a few different ways. So one, we can use it to figure out what might be a reasonable half or full marathon time to expect. So maybe you've recently run a 5K and you ran it in 25 minutes. So you'd come to this 5K column for race time equivalents, and 25 minutes is between the 24:42 and the 25:15. So we're somewhere in these two. And then it's going to give you half marathon time somewhere between 1:53:39, 1:56:11 is what you'd be shooting for, or a marathon time between 3 hours and 55 minutes or 4 hours is what you could reasonably expect to run based on all these pace charts, which are built off of years and years of data and physiological research. And so this is giving you a good idea of, okay, so I ran a 25-minute 5K. I could reasonably expect to run a 3:55 to a 4 hour marathon. The other way you can use this is to work backwards and say, you know, I'm really hoping to break 3 hours for the marathon. That's my goal. I want to qualify for Boston. I want to run sub 3. And then looking at these corresponding times and seeing if this in any way seems reasonable. And so if your goal is to run a sub 3 marathon and you've previously run a 19-minute 5K and a 38:30 10K and something in the ballpark of this half marathon time, then yeah, 3 hours is probably a reasonable goal for you to shoot for. But if your 5K PR is 22 minutes and none of your PRs or recent race times are in the ballpark of these corresponding times, then this 3 hours is quite possibly a little bit of an overreach. And maybe you should be setting your goal somewhere else, get a marathon under your belt, and use that as a bridge to then build to a further future marathon that you would then run successively faster. Um, so you can use it either by looking at recent times, where would that give you as a predictor for a half or a full marathon time, or taking what you have as your goal and doing a reality check by using these corresponding paces. So let's say we now know what our goal is and we've confirmed that it's reasonable. And let's say that our goal is to run the marathon in 4 hours and 30 minutes. So now as we structure our training, we're going to look over here at these paces. So we get our easy pace, 10:56 to 12 minutes per mile. And this is what you want to do the bulk of your long runs at and your easier or recovery runs throughout the week at. And so there's a range here. It's over a minute. Some days or some distances of easy runs, you might be closer to that 11 minute. Other days you might be up more closer to that 12 minute. And this can help you figure out which of our Sunday training team pace groups to train with. So the 10:50 to 11:10 group might might be a reasonable option here, or the 11:20 to 11:40 group might also be an option here, or the 11:50 to 12:10 group. So you have a few different groups that you could choose from, or potentially even float around between throughout the season for your easy runs. Then we've got marathon pace. So a 4:30 marathon is 10 minutes and 17 seconds per mile. So that's what you would want to use if you were doing tempo runs at marathon pace, or doing some race pace work built into your long runs to get some exposure to what that pace feels like. We also have half marathon pace, which is going to be faster at 10 minutes per mile. And some of the workouts on the training plan do call for running either at half marathon pace or at marathon pace. So this is where you'd find what those paces are. A lot of the workouts on the training plan call for running at threshold pace. And that's something that is quote unquote comfortably hard or comfortably challenging. It's hard. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's a sustainable hard effort. So you could do this for maybe 45 minutes continuously in a hard race. But after doing it for 40 plus minutes, it's going to get really uncomfortable. But our training plan calls for doing this in shorter bouts, often from 5 minutes to 10 minutes in length, periodically longer. And so your threshold pace would be 9:22 per mile. And it doesn't have to be exact. So you'd want to be in the range of that. So somewhere in the 9:15 to 9:30 per mile ballpark. Interval pace and repetition pace we don't use particularly frequently in our variety of the training plan that we shared for this. You could incorporate them into half or full marathon training. We just haven't really built them into many of our workouts. There are some fartleks on the training plan that do call for bits of running at these paces, but they're short amounts of running. But these give you ballparks of what those paces would be. Interval pace is something that you could do for, say, 10 to 15 minutes consecutively in a race environment. And then repetition pace is something that's more in the general ballpark of your mile pace. So when you're looking to run strides, repetition pace could be a good benchmark for what to try to average your strides around. And so that's this general framework for how these work. You can use these as a tool to figure out what pace to be running at on different days. We've got this blue, different shades of blue highlighting or blue going into lavender here. And those talk about how your easy pace correlates to your marathon pace. So everything here faster than a 5:10 marathon or a marathon pace of 11:49 per mile and faster, your marathon pace is faster than your easy pace. So your easy runs are going to be slower than your marathon race pace. In this ballpark, from a 5:15 marathon to a 6:15 marathon, your marathon pace is in the zone of your easy run pace. Um, and it starts sort of at the faster end of the zone at 5:15 and comes to the tail end of the zone at 6:15. But your marathon pace is going to be similar to your easy run pace. And then for a 6:20 marathon and on back, your easy run pace is actually going to be faster than your marathon pace. And that we'll see here for half marathoners as well, 2:35 and faster for a half marathon. Easy pace is slower than half marathon pace. 2:40 to 3:10, they're roughly the same or overlapping. And then a 3:15 half marathon and on back, your easy pace is going to be faster than your race pace. So that can just be helpful to know throughout your training.